The wonderful bell choir. Fabulous, absolutely fabulous. One of my favorite teachers is Angeles Arian. And she is not only a writer, but she also was a cultural anthropologist. And one of the things that she wrote about was about the sound of bells cross-culturally on a spiritual basis. And she said that bells originated with spiritual meaning in the East, and they would ring as a way of awakening all of us to remember the promises that we made to our ancestors before we came. What an amazing thought, don't you think? It tells us that we had a purpose before we arrived on this planet, and that we came with purpose and that we came with intention. And so when we hear the sound of bells, our soul awakens to remember that we are here to heal whatever needs to be healed within ourselves. But we are also here to bring a blessing, or as indigenous people say, to bring our original medicine to the world. And so I think it's perfect that we have the bell choir with us today, because we are the week after Easter. And Easter is the time of resurrection, when we rise again spiritually, where we let go of some embedded old ideas and old patterns that are not of God, that have kept us away from knowing and living in the Christ of who and what we are. And so the bells are awakening us in a new way, and they're going to be used today to open up our spirits to hear how we are called to go forward in the world. And I think as we do that, today is a part of our Easter service, even though typically in Unity the Easter celebration ends on Easter Sunday. But I really like to extend Easter celebration to this Sunday as well, to include post-resurrection, and to also talk about the end of Jesus' life. You know, in Unity, we consider ourselves to be progressive Christians, meaning that we have a more liberal and a different way of looking at Christianity. Sometimes we're called metaphysical Christians, meaning that we look symbolically at the teachings of the Christ. And so if we do that, I think it's important, though, because of our Christian heritage, to really look at all of the writings that are in the Gospels that relate to Jesus, our way shower, our beloved elder brother. And if we do, we find that there are stories about Jesus that went on beyond Easter morning. And in those stories, what we saw and what we realized is that Jesus appeared. Jesus appeared 10 different times within 40 days. And sometimes he appeared as a vision. Other times he appeared as kind of a ghost. And then other times he appeared as a resurrected being that ate and communed and had people touch him. The disciples touched him. And so you see, he came to the people that knew him the most. He came to them, whether it was the disciples, the 11 that were remaining after Judas had gone, or whether it was Mary Magdalene or Mary, the mother of some of the disciples. But he came to them to tell them something. He came to say, I am here in spirit. I am what Paul calls Christ Jesus. And I come forward with a message for you so that you can go forward in a new way, no longer attached to my physical being. But I come to you to tell you that I am beyond the physical nature of my beingness, and that I am spirit. And so he appeared to people again and again and again. And he reminded them to rise up, to share the teachings, to share the knowledge, to spread the truth beyond their doors and beyond their comfort zone. And he said, go forward and tell people the truth and let them know this which has transformed you. And you know, Jesus, with his followers, they were grateful for these experiences. Some of them accepted him right away. Others did not. Others were doubtful or unsure. Others were afraid. But before he left them, he said to them, remember this, I am with you always to the end of days. I am with you always. And what was he saying? He was saying that which I am, the living Christ, is with you always, forever and ever. And I love those words because I think they remind us that the living Christ lives in each of us as well. And that we, like the disciples, are called to go forward, to spread the word as the truth transforms us. We are called to go beyond our comfort zones and our familiarity. We're called to reach out. And when I think about this, I think about how Jesus said, greater things than this, greater things than what I do, shall you do. Meaning that there are more of you, and you will spread this word beyond what I as one being can do. And so you see, this is a huge charge that we all have as we go forward. And even though back in biblical times, the Jewish people really were looking to a Messiah, and they saw Jesus as the Messiah, as it was written and prophesied, they really needed for him to be extraordinary. They needed for him to go beyond being an individual that was convicted and hung on a cross to die. What if that was the end for them? They would say, this isn't my Messiah. He's just like anybody else. He's a prophet. He's a very good prophet, but he's not the Messiah. The Messiah has powers, has presence, has abilities beyond. And so we see how it is perfect, as it is written in Scripture, that he rose from that earthly way, those human limitations, and he rose and he was seen again and again and again. In Unity, we don't take a stand. We don't say, you have to believe that he died on the cross, was buried and resurrected, and that he walked around and that he ascended into heaven. That's up to you. That's up to your belief, whether or not you really believe that in a literal sense. But what we would say in Unity is, let us take the deeper meaning and how it has impact for us to go forward in a spiritual way. And we would say this, that by Jesus transcending as the Christ, as the divine nature, transcending human limitations and the physical world, what we recognize that we also spiritually resurrect. When we release, and when we cross out, when we put to death those ideas and things that do not serve, and we leave them, no longer picking them up, no longer giving them energy. So think back to Easter Sunday. And think back to a resurrection experience that you might have had. I know that I had one. And I feel like God has been working with me for the last 3 or 4 months on letting go of this old idea of letting negativity impact me. And I have to say, first of all, that I am so much better than I used to be. That stuff used to put me in a box and lock me up, and I could just drown in that kind of thinking. I'm so much better than that. But there are times to this day when I just go in there because there's a groove in my consciousness that goes for that. You know, it likes hearing the yuck, and it goes, yeah, see, you suck. You know, you're terrible. You're this, you're that. And it kind of knows that groove of insecurity and inadequacy that I remember having from a kid, and I would bet you that there's a couple of you that can relate to that story. So you know what I'm talking about. But this Easter, I have been spiritually prepared for the last several months to release my immediate draw to that kind of energy. And God has shown me again and again when that kind of stuff comes up. Not that I'm not open to suggestion or improvement, but God has shown me again and again, almost immediately, I have been blessed with kindness or compassion or appreciation, whether somebody says something to me or whether something beautiful happens. And I know over and over that is God speaking to me to let go, to cross out that magnetism I have to negativity, to let it die, and to rise up and live in light and live in goodness. So I know that that's been my experience, and I found myself kind of slipping in that groove. You know how the mind has a way of testing, and it's like, here's a little nibble. And so I started with a little thought this morning, and I was just about to get in my car. I was walking out of the house into the garage, and I heard this little voice going, "Nyeh, nyeh, 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 nyeh." And I thought, no way, no way. I had my keys in my hand, and I was on a mission from God, I'm telling you. I opened the door, it's like, no way. I'm going forward, and I no longer put up with that in my head. Because it's not anyone else's voice, it's my voice in the head of my mind that talks to me. And this is what we're called to do in our own ways, whatever it is that we are letting go of. Whatever it is that no longer serves in a big way, we are letting it go. It is dying. And as that thing dies in our consciousness, we rise up resurrected. We rise up anew. And that is how we are called to live. And so today, this is the Sunday after Easter Sunday. And this is the Sunday when we go forward as resurrected beings. And one of the best ways that we do that in unity is we use a white stone ceremony, whether it's the beginning of the year or I prefer to do it at Easter. But we use a white stone ceremony that we participate in to call forward a new name spiritually as we come forward. Some of you have experienced the white stone ceremony many times, and some of you have perhaps experienced it a few times. And perhaps this is the first time for some of you. But what it is, it's a beautiful way to listen to Spirit within and to hear from your inner guidance how you are directed to go forward with a new name. That can be a word or it can be a phrase, but it's a new beginning spiritually to, again, fulfill the promise that perhaps we made to our ancestors, to come forward with our own original medicine, with our spiritual gifts that only we can bring forward in our way. And as we do that, we heal whatever needs to be healed. We release that which does not serve, and we go forward as a blessing in the world. Unity has two co-founders, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore. And Charles Fillmore, in his 94th year of life, he has a wonderful quote that many of us know. He said, "I fairly sizzle with zeal." I fairly sizzle with zeal. and I go forward to do the things that ought to be done by me. Now, I shortened his quote, but can you imagine a man who's 94 sizzling with zeal? I personally would very much like to see that. But when I think about him and I think about his white stone, I imagine that perhaps the new name that he got might have been passion or aliveness, something like that. And when I think about Myrtle Fillmore, our co-founder, she was 86. And virtually to the day she died, she went every day to work in Silent Unity, Unity Village, and she worked in the prayer ministry. And so I imagine what her new name might have been on her white stone. And I wonder if it would have been prayer, if it would have been truth or compassion, or maybe it would have been serve others. You see, the Spirit within us is always calling us forward in a sacred way to direct us on as a blessing. So, in the last few years, I've collected quite a few stones, and I keep them in my office and I look at them always. And last year, I received a stone that said, "Peace always." And at that time, I was going through some inner conflicts, so that was very powerful. And the year before that, I got a stone that said, "Forgiveness. I forgive." When I was holding back, I was hanging on to some little resentment that was consuming my mind. Forgiveness. I forgive. Oh, and then I really love this one because we have two services. So at the 9 o'clock, I got one that said, "Spiritual power, shine on." And just as I was moving in that, at 11, I got one that said, "Humble." I thought that was perfect. So, you see, our stones will always guide and direct us in a wonderful way. And so today, I want you to know in advance that you will receive a name that will be right for you. It will be perfect for you, and you will receive it here when we move into meditation. Or it will come to you in the hours and the days to come, but you will know it. Because as we are joined together, we are asking to be guided and directed to what our new name is. And as we ask, we will receive. And so hold this awareness in your heart and allow it to be present for you. And know this. It comes from the book of Revelation, and it's about the white stone. What it says is, "To the one who is victorious, I will give some of my hidden manna, and I will also give that person a white stone with a new name written on it, known only to the one who receives it." Today we choose to be victorious. We choose to hear our new name that is indeed spiritual food for us. And we choose to go forward, awakened, ready to heal and ready to bless.